Thank you very much. My job this afternoon is the simplest. My job is just to first introduce members of the Lagos economic team to you all this afternoon. Essentially, on the other side of the aisle, we have the gentlemen of the press who report business, investment, and everything associated with finance. And so this event has been fittingly tagged Facts Behind the Figures. We're here this afternoon to discuss the facts behind all of the figures you've heard about in the news of late, that the Lagos state government intends to spend under the budget, christened budget of rekindled hope. Without wasting much time, I'll start with a man who has been at the very forefront of the battle to keep us all alive. Distinguished guests, please, I introduce Professor Akin Abayomi, Honorable Commissioner for Health, Lagos State. Distinguished guests, it is my pleasure to acknowledge the presence of the Special Advisor to the Governor of Lagos State on Works and Infrastructure, Engineer Aramide Adeyoye. Welcome, man. There is a man who is working around the clock to make this happen. Distinguished guests, in our very lifetime. Welcome with me, Dr. Frederic Oladeinde, the Honorable Commissioner for Transportation. And then, of course, distinguished guests, please acknowledge with me Mr. Benga Omotosho, Honorable Commissioner for Information and Strategy. On the far right is Dr. Rabiu Olowo, the man whose name depicts what he does. He is an Olowo and is in charge of the finance of Lagos State. Please acknowledge with me, Dr. Olowo. You're welcome, sir. Last but not the least, the man who is going to tell us the story, all of the things we need to know behind those figures, is no other person than Mr. Sam Egube, Honorable Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budgets. A round of applause, please. Please, all Lagos State government officials, please just rise to your feet to be acknowledged. Please, we welcome you very respectfully this afternoon. Thank you, thank you, God bless you, thank you. All right, so without wasting time, I'll just hand over to the Honorable Commissioner for Information and Strategy, who's going to give us a very brief opening remark, and then we take a deep dive into all of the figures and all of the facts that we need to know this afternoon. Thank you.
Gentlemen of the press, thank you for coming here. And let me first apologize that we are starting a little bit late. You know, when you are coming to see giants in business and financial reporting, you must get your facts and figures right. And this is all about facts and figures. And when I was a journalist, still an editor in the newsroom, I paid more attention to facts than figures. Probably because I'm not all too good about figures. But facts I usually paid attention to. And this afternoon, what we are going to be talking about is facts behind the figures. We have christened this budget as a budget of rekindling hope. I do not see any other phrase or name that can be more apt than this. Considering all of the things that we went through in Lagos last year. First, we had the rains that wouldn't stop, and people were accusing us when we came in as a government that we were not doing roads, and then we started fixing roads. And all of a sudden, coronavirus came upon us and torpedoed many plans. Despite that, we were able to have a budget performance of almost 90%. And when we thought we were getting free of coronavirus, and then we should start sitting down and doing some more so that we could fulfill all of the promises that we promised Lagosians, we had answers protests. But this is Lagos, a state of resilience. The answers protests, the coronavirus crisis, all of them have taught us how to, we have used them as a platform for us to, a springboard for us to go forward in Lagos. And that is why we have this kind of ambitious budget. But like I have said, I will not want to take your time or take the wind out of the sail of my colleagues who are men of figures and facts. So I will not want to say much about this other than to just welcome you and thank you for honoring our invitation, and that you should feel free to ask any question that you may want to ask about the budget of Lagos State. We have all of the people here who are competent to answer the questions, because all of us were part of the preparation of this budget. So on that note, I would like to hand over to the Commissioner for Budget and Economic Planning to take us through the budget. And after that, if you have any questions, and I hope, and I know that you are going to have many, you cannot have giants in business and financial reporting of the caliber of people that I am seeing in this new room today, without knowing that they will have so many questions to ask. But I assure you, you are going to get competent answers. Once again, thank you for coming, and then have a nice time with us. Thank you.
Good evening, good morning. Sometimes it's not too clear whether it's evening or morning, the way the work in Lagos goes. I'd like to just acknowledge my colleagues in the cabinet that are here present, my colleagues who are from the ministry also coming here to support this occasion. But very specially, I'd like to acknowledge members of the press who are here present around the scale, while I just present what we'll call the detailed expressions of the budget. So basically, I'll be reviewing the performance on the 2020 budget. It's important that we see how we did in the past, so that we know whether the future holds the promise which we give. In terms of highlights, we didn't know when we entered 2020 that COVID was lurking around the corner. But once it did, as reasonable leaders, we felt it was important for us to review our strategy. We put the themes agenda under review, and it stood out strong. It was still relevant. And all we needed to do was to review the budget somewhat downwards, and then to bring forward certain aspects of the budget and of the themes agenda that were important. Because for us, what it was that we needed to maintain a very strong pandemic response. We needed to rethink the way we are going to live together, drive the economy, and drive the outcomes of our government going into the balanced part of 2020. We then reviewed the budget downwards. We reviewed it by 21% from 1.16 trillion to 920 billion, having taken deep considerations for the headwinds that we were experiencing. The result of that was a recurrent expenditure drop by about 10% to 413, and a revenue revision down to 812 billion. That was a 24% reduction of about 240, 250 billion, leaving us with a ratio between capital and recurrent expenditure of 55-45. I'm happy to announce to you that despite the huge challenges, the economic and social headwinds which COVID-19 brought, together with the hijack of the NSAS protestations, we still drove the economy of Lagos very strongly. We kept our hands on the steering wheel and remained focused, and we were able to achieve a overall budget performance of about 86%, with a total revenue performance of about 93%. This, in our view, is quite remarkable, especially given the nature of the challenges we faced as a people and we faced as a state. And so there were great performances along all the sectors, basically, especially in finance, health, education, transportation, agriculture, infrastructure, and the environment generally. In finance, one major thing we did was to renegotiate our finance book to try and gain significant amount of traction in terms of our interest rate reduction. Rates were about 20% as at that time, and we were able to negotiate it down to 12%, and in some cases, we achieved single-digit interest rate. That threw out a savings of about 12 billion. We also undertook the review of the 2018 land use charge law, basically to moderate the rates and to simplify its application in line with the yearnings of the people of Lagos. And thankfully, we achieved that completely in 2020. In addition to other initiatives around the EGI system and trying to digitize it, to make it more efficient. So the EGI system is moving on. We then launched the Lagos State Real Estate Regulatory Authority electronic platform, which we believe will bring a lot of organization and transparency into those sectors and help us also provide better service for the people of Lagos, and in turn increase the revenue coming out of those sectors. In the health sector, we know that the quality of healthcare is key under the team's agenda. We had attacked it in the pillar H, which spoke to healthcare, and spoke to the environment. Those two pillars actually drove the idea that it was not only the curative part of health that was going to be important, but also the preventive part and the way we dealt with our environment. The health budget was about 97.26 billion for 2020, but there was an additional 20 billion, which was a special COVID-19 intervention response that brought the entire health spend to about 117 billion. So in this sector, there are ongoing constructions relating to the furnishing and equipping of the maternal and child center at Badagry and Egbe, ongoing renovation works at the general hospitals at Isolo, Ebutemeta, and Harvey Road. We are undertaking and we have begun the construction of the New Mercy Children's Hospital. The idea for us is that when that hospital is complete, we believe it will be the largest in sub-Saharan Africa. If you are going to be a part of Lagos, then you must be audacious in the way you think and in the goals that we set for ourselves. We also undertook the redesign and the construction of a 280-bed general hospital at Ojo, and increased to 205 the number of empaneled health facilities on the Lagos State Health Management Agency. What that will do is that it provides an increase in the number of places people can go to under the state insurance health scheme. And health is also a service. And without having enough people in terms of the ratio of the healthcare workers to the patient, even if you had all the facilities and infrastructure, the service tends to fail. So the government also recruited additional 760 health workers to boost the service of our healthcare systems in 2020. Education was another place that we felt we must move on. We've also always mentioned that human capital development was going to be very core in the way we drive Lagos State. It's our belief in Lagos State that it doesn't matter how much natural resources you have, and you can see that in the challenges we face in the nation. It is the resource we have within our brain, our cerebral capacity, that actually gives meaning to all of those natural resources that we speak about. Therefore, Lagos State prioritizes the education sector, basically to drive it by consistently training the teachers, improving on the infrastructures, using technology to aid their development, and then continuously renovate, rehabilitate, and and improve the environment of learning in our school system. We launched Eco Excel, which basically trained over 9,000 teachers, putting technology in their hands that standardizes the curricula, the teaching aids, and the teaching guides that the teachers will use to teach our children at school. It came also with 350,000 books and educational materials for our children to basically drive their learning protocol and their learning outcome. We also then recruited 2,000 primary school teachers and 1,000 secondary school teachers because we were experiencing some depletion in that area, right? On the infrastructure side, we rehabilitated about 589 classrooms and 1,568 bed hostels in our secondary and primary schools. We also provided furniture for over 220,000 students, renovating 20 libraries and information technology centers, because it's becoming clear that as we encourage our people to read, it's also important to get them acquainted with the use of technology. The new normal has social distancing with it, and therefore technology is that bridges the gap, which was what led us to begin to prepare our people on the technology side, training about 100,000 people on the Code Lagos initiative over 656 public and private schools. The idea is to make them competitive both locally and internationally. And given the broadband technology which we're deploying around Lagos, which is a 3,000 kilometer broadband, high-speed internet, fiber infrastructure around Lagos, we believe that we'll begin to prepare our people, and we want to make Lagos the hub for technology in Africa. And it's in light of that we approved the e-learning infrastructure for our state tertiary institution, making us the first state to achieve this in the country. But we do not forget that not everybody is able to undertake the payment of fees or the cost of learning. And so our bursary and scholarship award went to 8,246 people and 845 beneficiaries respectively. But the elderly are not left out, because learning must continue at every age and demographic category that we have. So we established additional 21 adult literacy centers and 2 vocational centers. We're beginning to see the outcome on our educational side as our students are winning trophies in competitions around the globe and around the country. And that tells us that what we are doing is working in many ways than one. But we'll continue to drive that narrative. In transport and infrastructure, we've commenced work, having identified 60 grid load points around the state. We've converted 6 critical junctions and roundabouts around the Kotun, Allen, a series in the Lekki-Epe corridor, basically to synchronize the signalization and increase vehicular capacity. Of these 60 identified grid lock which we are working on, we've completed work on 31 of them. And I'm sure as you go around, you see the changes in some of these places, so that we're not just speaking, but we are acting. And this happened despite the lockdown, despite all the challenges that we faced. Construction work has also commenced in various bus terminals at Ojota, Agege, Airport Road, Abulegba, Yaba, and Oyigbo. And when you see this picture, this is the Oyigbo bus stop completed that was raised down during the protestation. But like Mr. Governor always says, we will rise again. We've received commitment. This place will be rebuilt again. It will be rebuilt better, and the people of Lagos will never be deprived from the benefit of having great governance lead the state. We have also finalized the financing for Red Line. When we came, we knew the rail lines are going to be projects of great audacity. We had looked at our balance sheet. We knew it would be a challenge to carry rail construction on top of that balance sheet. But with the ingenuity of the leadership of the government, supported by the team, the Honorable Finance and myself, and other members of cabinet who supported in the approval of the structure, we were able to close a bespoke structure, single-digit 7-year money, to take on the Red Line. The Red Line is a 24-kilometer project, I think, coming all the way to Marina. It will stop first at Oyingbo and then take us from Agbado to Oyingbo and then to Marina. When that project is complete, it's going to have about, I think, 10 bus stations, about 8 bridges, and 13 pedestrian bridges. So it's a very big project. It's going to move like 22.5 million people monthly, and it's going to reduce the travel time from Agbado to Marina from 2.45 hours to about 45 minutes. That is savings of about 28 million man-hours, and this is about improving the productivity, really, of our people. But we are not stopping at that. We are taking on the Blue Line, and we are currently in high negotiations with financial institutions to also broker a structure that Lagosians will be extremely proud of to deliver the Blue Line. When the Blue Line is complete, that's a 27-kilometer line coming all the way from Okoko and will terminate eventually at Marina. It will move about 12 million people and save about the same amount of time in making that commute. We've also looking at the fact that as you drive some of these main arteries, it's important also that when they drop our people, wherever they drop you at the main arteries, you have some mechanism for getting home. So we have launched and initiated the first mile and last mile schemes, which basically will deliver about 2,000 buses, and that will basically take you in a last mile journey or in a first mile journey, depending on the direction you are going. This will move about 332,000 passengers every day, right, to basically ease transportation. So it's no surprise when we say that first pillar is transportation and traffic management. On the roadside, I mean, we also have we've started. We launched the regional roads. It's 8.6 kilometers of 3-lane dual rigid pavement road coming all the way from Victoria Garden City, running parallel to the Lekki Expressway and ending up on Freedom Way. That would decongest traffic in that space. At the same time, we have flagged off the Beji-Lekki Expressway beginning from Eleko to Ekpe in the first phase of it. Again, it's 18.75 kilometer, 3-lane rigid pavements with way bridges, right? I think the idea is that when we spend money, we should do roads and infrastructure that can last for 20 years or more. And that is the idea of what we are doing. In addition to that, we've undertaken several urban regeneration projects, 17 critical road projects in Victoria Island, Ikeja, Koshofe. Some of those roads are Thompson's Avenue. You see them, you see the construction and the quality of work going on in Ikoyi. Another one I can mention here is Adeyoye Lakija in Victoria Island, Shobo Rubiodu in Ikeja, GRA, Demure in Koshofe, and so on and so forth. This covers roads totaling 24 kilometers. We're also constructing and rehabilitating other road projects across the state. So if you look at Ijede Road, Igbogbo, Agrikishao Road, Obasekumade Road, all in the Ikorodu axis, Ishuti Road, Igondo Egon, Ayobo Road, which is basically a bridge that we'll be constructing there in the Alimosho axis. We are closing out on Pen Cinema. By the end of this quarter, the flyover for Pen Cinema with the attendant relief that it will come with will be done in the Agege axis. Iwaya and St. Fimbas Road, Abulokuta and Sholui Roads, all within the Shomolu area. Aradagun, Imekemowo Road, to basically connect Lagos to Badagry Expressway in the Badagry axis. And our Public Works Department, which is driving the zero pothole initiative of the government, has delivered 297 road interventions across the state. But COVID taught us that even though you always find food in Lagos, that given our consumption capacity, it's very easy to suddenly fail in the food security area, right? As long as your supply chain is tempered with, it's easy for you to deplete. So we heightened, you will notice in the 2020 budget review, we heightened our focus on agriculture. And one of the things we said we'll do was complete the rice mill. The rice mill, when completed, will deliver about 300,000 jobs for our people. And that is very important because we see ourselves as a consumption center, and it was wise to put a processing mill for rice in Lagos. We are also establishing a Lagos Agripreneurship Program at Avia Igborosu, where we are training a lot of our youths and beginning to show what we do in Lagos. So the fish market, the seafood market, and the festival, which we drive from time to time, is basically to get our farmers to showcase what they are doing and get them closer to the market. That's not all, because fish and aquaculture is a place of our competitive advantage. Cabinet approved a PPP arrangement called the Lagos Aquatic Center of Excellence. When this is complete, it's going to provide fingerlings and going to provide feeds for our fishermen. It's going to also grow new species for our fishermen and be in a position to buy back their production. What that would do is that our production capacity right now in the fish area is about 20% of what we can really do. Basically because of fingerlings and fish, and who will buy it when we're finished? How do we store it? So the Lagos Aquatic Center of Excellence will come to basically deliver that. You can see the images of the rice mill under construction going on. But we are also training students and using their summer schools to begin to get agriculture as a part of their style and a part of what we call dignity in labor. Agric is inclusive, right? Empowering fishermen, empowering our women, getting a lot of our people to get acquainted with some of the raw materials in our environment, like coconut, for example, use of it in baking and other kinds of production outcomes. And to drive that in the future in a manner that is steady, we also completed our 5-year agricultural master plan. So that everything we do is calculated, is deliberate, and is being driven methodically. So let's look at what the year 2021 budget highlights brings. This budget, which we have christened the budget of rekindled hope, actually reflects the determination of our people and of this government to rise above the challenges that have affected our development in the last 12 months. It demonstrates our willingness, right, to overcome all obstacles and to deliver on the electoral promises. No excuses. The idea is that despite the coronavirus pandemic, the NSAS protests, all that did was to heighten our resolve and to assure us that what we planned from the beginning was correct. It made us see very clearly that Mr. Governor saw tomorrow today in its planning and in its definition, right, of what our development agenda is. And characteristically, that agenda did not come from the air. It came from wide consultation. And that is why citizens' participation is one of the foundational principles by which this government runs. And it's because of that you see the resilience that plays out, because it's not just some people in cabinet that are driving, but the people of Lagos combining their intelligence together and cooperating with the government actually delivers that resilience that is required. So the people of Lagos shows their resoluteness. We supported ourselves. It was not only government intervening during COVID pandemic lockdown. You saw citizens also intervening, NGOs. You saw corporate bodies coming out, and that is the true spirit of ECO. So that when we say Ajimoshe, right, it is true, and Lagos always proves that to create a greater Lagos. So in terms of the uniqueness of this budget, the budget actually shows the level of participation of our citizens. You had different levels of consultative fora by the cabinet with the people of Lagos across several senatorial districts, and also virtually at the same time. The House of Assembly also engaged their constituents and did come back with the decision reached for us to incorporate in the budget. So when you see a review, right, from 1.155 to 1.63 by the House of Assembly, it is the outcome of that engagement, right? It is the audacity to aspire on behalf of the people of Lagos to deliver a budget size of 1.63 trillion coming through a pandemic and various loss of life and properties of a hijack process. This budget, it's also the fact that we will deliver more, right, than what can be seen and captured in the budget through bespoke financing terms and structures, including PPP, various critical infrastructure. I had talked about the blue line, I had talked about the rail line, I had said somehow it was clear that the balance sheet could not carry those transactions on its own. But you heard me announce that we are going ahead with it. It means we have found very creative means to deal with it. And I believe other states over time will catch up with that thinking. It is the heightened investment in youth engagement. What you will see about this budget is that coming out of the NSAS protestation, it is clear that we need to heighten, right, the aspects of our youth engagement, our youth civic reorientation, right, so that we carry everybody together, nobody will be left, whether the youths or whichever demography we belong to. It is the continued determination that no community will be left behind, as we will experience in all our projects that will be selected both by the communities and the government, working in several special projects when you look through the budget. The uniqueness of this budget is also in the teamwork of the state cabinet and the performance management systems that will assure a strong budget performance. So when we give our budgets, we expect very strong performance, irrespective of the challenges which we face, as you saw in the budget performance of the 2020 budget. But this budget is also the story of a strong cabinet and a strong leader in Mr. Governor, who will not back down to the challenges, but will move full speed ahead and with a lot of courage and a lot of style, deliver on the desires and the promises of the government. In terms of objectives of this budget, we have 10 broad objectives which we are driving. One is the continued and aggressive development and maintenance of our infrastructure across the state, and you will see that in the size of our infrastructure budget. is the intention that we intend to create employment and food security across the state. We also intend to continue to improve civic participation and inclusion and cooperation by our people in governance. And it's intentional for us, right, to continue to invest in human capital development. And when you are talking of human capital development, you are speaking of everything that educates and prepares our people for the economy of Lagos. But it also includes to ensure that they are healthy. Otherwise, you have an intelligent people that can't work because of ill health, right? We also feel that to position Lagos as a technology hub for Africa, right, it's important that we heighten the use of technology in our public service, also to improve the capacity of the state to collect revenues efficiently as possible. It's important to know that expenditure is not what the budget is about. If you do not have the revenues to support it, you will be unable to undertake the expenditure. And even if you have the capacity to borrow, it is your revenue lines that actually demonstrates to you your sustainability capacity in your borrowing. And that, I'm sure, you will see very strongly in that, irrespective of the budget deficit which you will see, will remain extremely sustainable in terms of our responsibilities and our leverage. But we know that we will not do it alone just from the revenue of government or from borrowing. We intend to attract investment also through public-private partnership, which is why we intend to push quite hard our ease of doing business mechanisms to ensure that we make it easier to deal in Lagos State. But I said it before, healthcare systems need to improve, and we feel that should start from the environment, right? In addition to improving our youth engagement and participation, and also our ability to empower them. But all taken, we still have to rebuild Lagos from the destruction. So that is a big chunk of what will happen. So in terms of overview, the budget size is 1.635 trillion, which really can approximate to 1.64. It's made up of 702 billion in capital spend, focusing a lot on development, because what we spend, we must account for it in the value it delivers in the future, which is why a significant part of our borrowing, actually the entire part of our borrowing, right, is focused very squarely on capital expenditure. And 460 billion of that is recurrent. Now, what that means is that our capital to recurrent ratio is 60-40. I actually would like to tell you that despite the challenges we faced last year, we still were able to hold out our capital to recurrent mix at 55-45. You will know that not many other jurisdictions were able to so try. Now, the revenue side of the budget is 971 billion. And of course, that, when you look at it compared to the budget side, it throws out a budget deficit of about 102 billion, which will be funded by internal loans, by bonds, and through external loans. But in terms of strategy, we are trying to reduce our risk exposure. So a lot of the loans that you'll be seeing are going to be loans in Naira. And sometimes, even when we are negotiating with international parties, we want them to be able to give us in Naira to protect the state from foreign exchange exposure risk as much as possible. That revenue size is made up of internally generated revenue of 723 billion, capital receipts of about 71 billion, and federal transfers of 175 billion. Yes, the expectation of this budget is quite audacious, but that's what it takes to live in Lagos. You need to have that spirit of courage, that spirit of audacity and determination, and you need to resolve in your heart that you must move ahead and reach for the skies. Nevertheless, right, we have moderated significantly our expectations from federal transfers, right? Based on our 2020 run rate, we should close federal transfers at around 178 billion. But we have a more conservative view, and we have kept it at 175 billion in 2021. So it is not just senseless audacity, right? It's audacity with a lot of reason and a lot of deliberation. A significant part of that revenue, which I just talked of, will come out of LRS. What we are doing to make sure that happens is basically to simplify our tax processes, right, and improve transaction taxes. In other words, taxes that are tied to the things you do, right? Because as we improve the ID systems statewide, it's important that we capture our taxes, a lot of it in the transactions. So we'll be moving a lot of initiatives in that direction. We believe that there's huge revenue generating opportunities in the state, and we'll continue to use a lot of data and intelligence. So it's not just aggression without direction. It's aggression with a sense of information and a sense of intelligence to seize those opportunities on the revenue side and to block leakages where they are identified. The budget size is broken down into recurrent and capital, as I said, and the ratios are 60:40. And the recurrent side of the budget is further analyzed to a total personnel cost of 168 and total overhead cost of 260, and then the debt charge of 31.7 billion. We've moderated and ensured that our personnel cost remains within the 40% internationally accepted benchmark of our total expenditure, right? And it represents about 14%, 14.5% of total expenditure. So we are well within that threshold. And I said on the capital side, 60% is a very, what I would call a holy position to be. History shows we can do it. And we believe with the performance management mechanisms, which we have, we are going to do it again in 2021. So I'll go details to show you how this budget is allocated on what we call the classification of the functions of government. And so in general public service, you have 137.8 billion, representing about 11.8%. A big chunk of that, some highlight which I needed us to see is what the budget is for technology, which is 24.5. But you will see how we have aggressively pushed up technology, given some of the objectives which I had explained earlier. Public order and safety is 44.1 billion. Economic affairs is 351 billion, moving to 29% from 26%. It's important that if we must lift the economy of our people up, we must do that around economic affairs, which involves our spend on agric, commerce, tourism, energy, transportation, the works family generally, waterfront, and so on and so forth. Our spend on environment is 59%, 59.6 billion. Housing and community amenities, 37 billion. Health, 106 billion. Recreation, culture, and religion, 7 billion. Education, 146 billion. Social protection, 9 billion. I've also tried to then show you again another perspective of it, the former one. I've also tried to show you again another perspective of it, which basically speaks to the way this same budget is driven around sectors. You know, sometimes when we talk about infrastructure, it's easy for your mind to go straight to works and infrastructure and look at the budget. But what this tries to do is to pull the infrastructure statewide, whether they are infrastructure around education, infrastructure around works, around transportation, and there are also infrastructures happening under general public service, which is where local governments are sitting, right? So this is what this allocation then shows. So in infrastructure, you will then see that we have moved from 211 billion to 291 billion, right, which is 38%. Right, this includes infrastructure in several places, in transportation, in works, even in the judiciary, and in justice, and in commerce and industry, where you see that we are aggressively driving it. So in transport infrastructure, for example, we are pulling up by 92% from 50.8 billion to 92 billion. For works, when you look at other things that we'll be doing in that area, we are moving from 143 to 174. But generally, I'd like us to note the infrastructure growth. I'd like us to also see what we are doing with food security, which has gone up dramatically from 14 billion to 20.7 billion. That is a substantial leap, covering agriculture and other projects around agri, scattered around the budget, but focused on food security. We are big on human capital development, where we have increased by 33%, right, from 121 billion to 160 billion. This is led by the education family that has grown from 108 billion to 146 billion, 36% growth, and everything around wealth creation that grew by 44%, and women affairs and poverty alleviation, basically supporting the education and skilling of our people in readiness for various vocations, moved up by 93%. It shows that this government also has a very strong point and strong spot for our women group. Health moved by 9%. Generally, if you take out the exceptional spend for our COVID intervention of 20 billion, right? The next place I'd like you to really look at is what we are doing in technology. Like I said, technology use is significant. We've grown it by 298% to really heighten it. In an environment where social distancing will become a norm, then technology must come in to solve the problem. And it is solving the problem not only in our communication, but also in our ability to interact and do business without the huge inhibitions that lockdown tend to bring. Energy is 30.8 billion. Public service and security moved up by 14% because all of this also must speak to security. But we talked about youth engagement, which has gone up by 58%. We intend to engage them as they are the focus when we are talking about technology, but also using sports, right, and community development and improving those facilities in the sports area will also help us deliver on that expectation when we talk about youth engagement. So in terms of some further details in driving the zero pothole policy, creating link roads to ease up transportation and resolve traffic congestion, we'll be doing about 167.8 billion, right, in the works family around roads. 15 billion has been set aside as seed money to help the Rebuild Lagos Trust Fund. As you are aware, Mr. Governor did commission and launch the Rebuild Lagos Trust Fund, and Lagos as a government will have made a provision of 15 billion to support them. Of course, we expect the contribution and the partnership of entire Lagosians and stakeholders of Lagos to help rebuild our lovely Lagos. We've provided 87.5 for the regional road, 19.5 for various roads across the state. The same thing, 10 billion at the local government levels, 13.6 billion to do specific ongoing project to completion like a Agege Pen Cinema Flyover, the Oregon Bridge Road Network, the Agric-Ishawo Road, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Igbogbo, Ijede Road, and all of those roads, Mbakadoso Road, to basically deliver that. We provided 5.9 billion to continue the work on the Lagos-Badagry Expressway, and then 8.5 billion to ensure that we intervene at very, very unit community project just to ensure that no one is left behind. We also provided 11 billion, basically for the reconstruction of the Lekki-Ekpe expressway from Eleko Junction all the way to the T Junction at Ekpe. And of course, I had described the quality of road and infrastructure we are putting on the table. But Lagos is a coastal town, and from time to time, the ozone surge, climate change, and all that normally attacks our communities around the coastal area. So we have made a provision of 9.2 to basically address coastal infrastructure to try and fight back some of those environmental challenges. So under traffic management, 92.74 billion, which we budgeted for, will address us in some of the work we are doing under the blue line and the red line. Of course, a significant part of that work will be by PPP arrangements and out of the structure, in the financing structure which we have put to ensure that it does not put a lot of burden on our balance sheet in the short run. We intend to develop better quality bus corridors. We want to then attack the trailer park in the state to try and reduce the burden of what's going on at Apapa and continue the junction improvement. In education sector, we intend to continue to do a lot of construction. 24 schools are targeted and a lot of renovation for over 134 schools will be undertaken. We'll continue to push the Eco-Excel project that basically uses technology to drive our teaching methods and then put books and tools in the hands of our students. In 2021, we intend to drive it up, the books and tools, to 450,000, covering over 239 school projects. This budget also will include providing equipment for our science laboratory. Under science and technology, we talked about the 24.57 billion that we budgeted. A huge chunk of that will go towards our smart city project. The smart city projects are in two directions. One is to put in the first phase 2,000 smart cameras across strategic positions in Lagos. Those cameras are intelligent cameras. They will have facial recognition capabilities. They will have number plate capabilities. They will help us remotely control traffic and ease transportation movements around Lagos, but it will also help us a lot with security as well. To support this also, you know, where I talked about the 3,000 broadband infrastructure in the first phase, and in the second phase we'll take it to 6,000. That entire project is a PPP initiative. I'm sure when you go around Lagos, you see those colored pipes and docks being put. We've moved full speed ahead, and we expect that we'll begin to see the benefits of this this year. In health, we continue to invest in expanding our health infrastructure to just ensure that they are fit for purpose. We want to continue very aggressively the new Mercy Children's Hospital, which I spoke about earlier, continue and complete the general hospitals in Ojo, the mother and child care centers in Badagry and in Ekpe, and basically to move on to upgrade our e-health platform, which actually is helping us today in our tracking mechanism. But we believe that given the population of Lagos, we expand that platform so that the people of Lagos can also interact with that platform and have remote medical consultations going forward. This is also in line with preparing the health sector for a digital health environment, right? Especially given the new normal that COVID-19 has brought. But we're also going to be constructing the oncology center at Bagada, the infectious disease center at Yaba. Here again, this is a place where we are going to be leading Nigeria and indeed Africa in putting this kind of, this level of research capability in place. We will continue to pay a lot of attention to the environment on the drainage side, in terms also of creating a very circular economy. We'll continue to move the envelope further in the way we deal with waste management. We have 19.98 billion provided for LOMA for waste collection and management, and continue to do what needs to be done, especially in our deflooding and our drainage maintenance program. So we put 14.9 billion to basically support our effort in environment. You know that tourism has been badly hit by COVID, and so we've put 5 billion earmarked, basically to upgrade some of the facilities and to support that sector in helping them come back. Now, one point which I did raise in terms of our youth engagement was how we intend to use sports to do it. So you saw an increase, a 58% increase in our commitment in the sport areas, basically to improve sporting facilities in the community, but also to be able to sponsor intercommunal competition and basically raise grassroots sports in Lagos State. For housing and community amenities, it was always our idea that the housing market will not be driven conclusively from government alone. It would have a very huge part in private, public-private partnership, and even direct investments by the private sector in that regard. So we've provided 33.9 billion basically to drive housing and community amenities. 3.4 billion for new housing projects, 4 billion to complete existing ones, and we have 3 billion has also been provided under other recurrent expenditure to drive the support systems that delivers this. Agriculture and food security is something we said has been heightened. We've put 19.5 billion behind it, working with our partners in the World Bank, trying to complete the rice mill. We have 2.5 billion provided for that to further develop our coconut capability, right, as an area of comparative advantage. We've put 4 billion to do that, not just in the production of it, but in the processing of it into other byproducts. 2.75 billion on agro-processing and enhancing productivity under our appeal programs, where we will also begin to commit to creating transparency and in our market areas, especially our food markets. We will do 1.35 billion in basically developing a wholesale produce market to help us negotiate better around the value chain and moderate and track where food is coming from, where it's going to, and basically create a market, right, that people and those who are interested in the market of Lagos can invest and trade very, very actively. For commerce and industry, we earmarked 5 billion, basically to drive our parks, the Mortal Light Industrial Park, the Berigbe Enterprise Zone in Ikorodu, and also additional investment in the Lekki Free Trade Zone development. Under wealth creation and employment, we've put 7.2 billion, basically to drive hubs and maker spaces, and then tool our people technically and vocationally, basically to just help them cope with their vocation. Under women affairs and poverty alleviation, we had shown you the increase in it, showing 4 billion earmarked in that, basically to continue to upgrade and equip our skill acquisition center, run various special poverty alleviation programs and interventions, and then also to ensure that they support the entire statewide effort in creating spaces that people can share facilities and equipment and do their production. In youth and social development, 5.13 billion was provisioned for, basically to improve our elderly care centers in Lagos Island, Ikorodu, Epe, Badagry, and Alimosho. We have 480 million set aside to support those living with disability. Basically, no one, as it is our mantra, will be left behind, and we need a government of inclusion as we do go. But, you know, if you don't have security, then all of this story will just go up in smoke. So security and governance also received 4.9 billion, a lot of commitment towards that in terms of supporting our state security apparatus, right? Ensuring that they are insured, life insurance, ensuring that they have equipment and tools to drive the work that they are designated to drive. But also, you realize that the street lighting project is part of security as well. It has economic and security benefit because it just gives you a general sense of safety and allows you to do business at night. So that is one other place we are going to be putting about 23 billion behind it. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, our friends from the press, I'd like to assure all of us that this administration, under the leadership of Mr. Governor Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, will leave no stone unturned in ensuring the full implementation of this budget. I have assured you earlier that we have a bespoke monitoring mechanism that just ensures we have our eyes on the ball at all times to drive the MDAs to do what is required to ensure a very strong budget performance. I'd like to also at this point mention that it's important as Lagos and as Lagosians that we also commit to upholding our civic responsibilities in paying the right taxes and encouraging our people to do so. Not only that, we should take additional increased responsibility in how we live together. So when we see people throwing waste on the streets, we should caution. When we see buses in which we are riding going one way, we should say no, right? And together, we've always said together, we will be able to build a stronger Lagos. We didn't commit to building it alone. We committed to building it together. And which is why part of our job is to facilitate that togetherness and encourage that participation of our people in driving it. So we wish to appreciate the members of the press in your support. It's been extremely professional. Not only when you speak in support of what we are doing, when you speak against what we are doing, showing that you have significant interest in it and you are contributing to see how we can improve that. And just trust that we will continue to do that. So on behalf of our governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and the Lagos State government and members of cabinet, I would like to thank all of you and do say as we drive 2021, this relationship will continue. It will not be blackout from the press. It will be constant engagement, constant enlightenment, constant interrogation of what we are doing. And we believe when we come back again at the end of this year, we will again have shown very strong performance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Babajide Komolafe. I write for Vanguard newspaper. I want to ask Honorable Commissioner, what is your current debt service or revenue to debt service ratio parameter? Then the borrowing you are going to do this year, how will it impact on that ratio? Then you've returned the budget back to about 1.2 trillion naira this year. What are the downside risk? I mean, that you see that may, undermine the attainment of this this thing. Then lastly, this has to do with road infrastructure. The good work the Lagos State is doing, Penn Cinema Bridge, Agege-Moto Road, Oshodi Ablegba, BRT Express, and the rest. I observed that some of the critical road that will help this axis have been rehabilitated. But I also observed that Sule Street stroke Shebi-Utimo axis, which lies almost parallel to the BRT corridor, has not been attended to. Similar to that is Itire Road. When will this good work of road rehabilitation be extended to Itire Road? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bosun Amofai. I work with Arise News Channel. The first was not a question, it's just a request. Do you think it is time for Lagos State to have its own GDP report published independently of the sovereign as a subnational? I think it will put a whole lot of your annual budgets into context. So if you rather start work with maybe the Bureau of Statistics to have Lagos State standalone GDP, if you contribute so much, the fifth largest economy in Africa, I think it is time for Lagos State to have its own Lagos State GDP, in which we can have all this sectoral breakdown and we can actually see that growth that you're making, and we can put it down to either a GMP per capita income for Lagos State, so that you stand that out. I think it's a suggestion. If you can start that in 2021 to have the GDP of Lagos State published by your statistics office, that's one. I would love to see that. The second is that the rail projects, both the red and the blue line, could you give us the more clarity or disclosure in terms of the parties to these single-digit interest rates? Or are they local? Are they foreign, multilateral, bilateral relations, institutions, as it were? What are the terms, and if their names can also be disclosed? That would be good to also put the whole project, being the first of its type across the country and in Africa, in more context. Thank you very much.
Okay, Emele On is my name. I write for Bloomberg. One question has been asked. So the second one is just to have clarity on the deficit financing. You said it's 192 billion. How much could you possibly do through loan, and how much will you issue as bond?
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Simeon Ebulu. I work for The Nation newspaper. I just want to draw your attention to what Lagosians face in commuting. If you are moving from somewhere, Okoko down to CMS, for instance, somewhere around Vokes, if you were there in the last 2-3 weeks, there appears to be no direction as to where anybody can pass. Vehicle, even on foot, it's so confusing. I just wanted you to take notice of that fact before I ask my question, which is, in view of the difficulty in commuting in Lagos, can we put a timeline to when the important rail line along that trajectory will be completed, so that while people are going through that difficulty of what it is right now, they can then do a projection that, well, we can put up with this in 2 years, in 3 years, or at whatever time we will be able to overcome this challenge so that there can be some comfort, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Okay, thank you very much for the questions. I would leave my colleague, the Honorable Commissioner for Finance, to speak to debt servicing. I would like to speak to what you call the downside risks. And my understanding is if we are unable to achieve this, what the implications are. So the way to put it is that when I hear all the questions and all that we say we want to do and we want to achieve, even though I raise a lot of comments as to what we have done, it is clear, and I'm sure you know, that there's a lot that still need to be done. And those things that need to be done comes out of the size of the budget. So there is a rate at which Lagos must grow, right, to address some of these things. And so it's not only to grow on the revenue side, but also to grow in the ingenuity with which you work with the private sector to deliver some of these objectives. We are thankful that last year we achieved over 90% of our revenue projection. Now, revenue is at the heart of what we are doing. And the Commissioner of Finance and myself spend times daily, monthly, through self-assessments, peer review mechanisms with MDAs, driving it with Mr. Governor and Mr. Deputy Governor sitting to just ensure that we are able to unlock the opportunities, right, that we have in Lagos to grow our revenue lines. We don't have a choice but to grow these revenue lines. We don't have a choice but to have a budget like this that addresses all the many important infrastructure requirements that we raise. And that is why we're able to do what we do. Now, the truth is that this government, right, was put there by the people of Lagos. And the nice thing about the way the government has moved is with the full participation of the people of Lagos. When we first met in our retreat, one of the things we all said to ourselves is that I will not fail, you will not fail, we will not fail, and together we will not fail. Which is why, despite the excuses that we could have embraced in the COVID challenge, we still went ahead to outperform ourselves. Because really, excuses build bridges to nowhere, right? So what I will really say is that the lives of the people of Lagos are at stake if we do not deliver on the budget. But we are convinced we will deliver on the budget because we are clear as to how we want to do this. We have invested in our revenue channels to do this. We are investing in improving our processes and putting technology. And our performance management systems are bespoke and we have our hands on it to make sure that it happens. And it is because of that faith that we believe we will see an upside, right? Because all I have explained is to manage the downside risk, to prevent it from occurring. The special advisor to the governor, Engineer Adeyoye, would talk about the fact that there are certain roads that still need to be done. But you know, it's interesting when we talk about more that needs to be done and tend to doubt, right, the more of the budget that we propose to drive. So she will talk about that and the plans of some of those projects. Boston, I would say yes. We are working on that in terms of publishing our own GDP as a standalone. We are working with the National Bureau of Statistics. We have teams working together to make sure that happens. In terms of the real projects, we are basically working with special funds that are available nationally with first-tier banks who have thought very deeply about the fact that they only get better if Lagos becomes more efficient. The country as a whole gets better if Lagos becomes more efficient. And so the country needs to come together to ensure, right, through its various corporate and institutional mechanisms to ensure that we're able to get the kind of funding, right, that is cheap enough to undertake that kind of project without breaking anybody's back in the future. And that's what I've done. It's completely Nigerian parties that are playing in making this funding available. We also have a very strong support from the central bank. And I think it's coming from the idea that Lagos is the gateway into Nigeria. And it's also the gateway out of Nigeria, right? And the truth is that there are many economies around the Nigerian state that will not thrive if Lagos capitulates, if the infrastructure required to drive an efficient city, a smart city, is not deployed. And we had said in one of our objectives is that we would cooperate and work with all parties and stakeholders to just make sure we move Lagos ahead. And I think to the credit of Mr. Governor, who is an extremely strong negotiator, has very huge experience in the finance industry, has built a lot of relationships within and outside government, and has put in everything together with the support of a united cabinet, right, to be able to negotiate a structure that will work and deliver for Lagos. The Commissioner for Transport will tell us more definitively as to when we intend to deliver the red line, to deliver the blue line, and the whole things around it. So let me just give the phone first to, the mic, first to the Honorable Commissioner for Finance, and then we would go to the Special Advisor for Works, and then to Transport. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll answer the question on our revenue to debt service. I think let me start by saying that for a state like Lagos, with a lot of infrastructural, I'll use the word deficit because there's a lot that we need to do in terms of our continuous improvement drive. Debt is good, especially when we're using them for capital projects. I think what is more important is our debt sustainability benchmark. To answer the question straight, we have two benchmarks that we follow. There is the Federal Debt Management Office benchmark of 30% revenue to debt. And of course, there's the World Bank benchmark, which is 40%. So on that basis, we closed the year 2020 at 19.8%. Very, very far low from any of the benchmarks that we're talking about. And I think the question also moves, to ask about what will be the implication of the additional debt given the 2021 budget. We see ourselves landing at about 22%, given all the numbers, the revenue, and the additional debt, we will put on our activities for 2021. We see ourselves landing at 22%. Our debt charges, as shown in the budget, is about 31 billion, and our total debt, repayment, including CDSA, principal, and interest, is about 158 billion. Bloomberg asked a question on, providing clarity more about deficit financing. Of course, we know that most part of the budget is predicated and really, its foundation lies on revenue. And like I've said, we cannot depend on our own internally generated revenue or the federal transfers that we get from the federal government. We want the kind of development that Lagos needs at this time, meaning that we have to go, and borrow. The breakdown of the 192 billion deficit financing as shown in the budget, we will go out for some domestic fund, raising in the local capital market through bond, about 100 billion. We will do external loan of about 52 billion, and we will also do internal loan of about 41 billion. And everything adds up to about 192 billion as shown in the budget. So that's the breakdown. And I think what makes us highly optimistic and very excited is that all this, it's a principle in all this will be used 100% for capital projects. Thank you.
I don't know if you could extend the microphone to the Special Advisor for Works.
Thank you. The gentleman from the press asked a question relating to when Itire Road will be reconstructed, as well as when Sule Street and Shebi Olomo will be done. Going straight to Itire Road. Itire Road, I think, was built in 1999-2000, right from Ojuelegba up to the end there. And like I always say, I tell people, if you use your road well, it will serve you well. Once your road is as good as your drain. Once you toy with the drains, that road is unlikely to last you. There is no reason why that road should not last us 30 to 40 years. Right now, it's only survived 20 years, partly basically because of the habits of our people. The Honorable Commissioner for Budget said it rightly. It's important as a people, as a Lagosian, that we take ownership of all of our assets. That way, it will serve us better. We'll be able to conserve our money and then use our money to be able to open up new areas. So we've seen ourselves going back to rebuild, to reconstruct and rehabilitate roads that we have long opened, access roads that we have already opened. So I'll go straight to the question. 6 months ago, the Public Works Corporation intervened in a sectional part of Itire Road around Obele-Oniwala because there was a drainage outfall issue there, and that's all that road there. There's still one area towards the Palace of Onitire that needs to be addressed. The PwC will come in, we started the budget, the warrants are open now. Within this first quarter, we will address that part. And then, so what we're doing essentially is because we feel that it's not the entire stretch that is bad. So the areas where we feel that they are bad and we can address, best international practice, that road can still last us better. There's nothing wrong with that road. What you've seen that road go through, the deterioration that you've seen now, is coming from the bad habits of how we use it. So we'll address it within the first quarter of this year. That's for Itire Road. You talked about Sule Street and Shebi Olomo. That also should come, like I would say, not all roads, we cannot, as a people, we cannot afford to reconstruct everywhere. So we'll see exactly what is the degree of deterioration on that road. Does it qualify for a fresh reconstruction, or can we intervene? Can PwC, is this something beyond the PwC? If it's not, then we'll try to fix it rather than rebuild. So that road, the drainage, it has a drainage issue. So it's a total award, and that takes time. But in the meantime, we will see some intervention that we can do to give relief, because it's an alternative to the Lagos-Abeokuta road. I haven't done the BRT lane. You would also observe that PwC in the last 1 week, they've started some roads on Lagos-Ota, the old Lagos-Ota, just to be able to give an alternative route to that. So we'll begin to come into the inner ones, and I'm sure within the first quarter, PwC will work on that, pending when we have the appetite to be able to start a full reconstruction. I think that answers that. You also talked about the Lagos-Badagry Expressway. Lagos-Badagry Expressway, it's one of the roads that I think it was started in 2009, yes. And to date, so it's taken us like 12 years, we're still on that road. A lot of people will wonder why. Lagos-Badagry Expressway, I tell people, is not, when you hear Lagos-Badagry Expressway, I see a lot of bad reports about Lagos-Badagry Expressway. As a state, we committed to doing Lagos to Okoko section of the Lagos-Badagry Expressway. Beyond Okoko, up to Seme border, it's a federal government baby. But of course, as citizens of Lagos, we all have the right to live, to be able to go on the motorways without having stress. So we're doing our best. You must understand that there are encumbrances on that route. The section that you talked about in January of last year, The first day of the year, we all went on an inspection, and Mr. Governor had promised to say, I promised you the year before, on my assumption of office, that come July, August, Trade Fair Junction will have been delivered. And so, January of 2020, he then made a commitment that before December, we will have gotten to the Lasso Junction. The Lasso Junction by the left, Lagos bound, from Badagry, Lagos bound, the left-hand side has been delivered. It's that section up to Lasso has been delivered. What you have that has not been delivered is the flyover by Alakija bus stop. The flyover by Alakija bus stop, so you have a lot of diversion taking place. I'll tell you something, if you say there is no movement on that road, as a people, we need to look at the ways we behave, the way we react on the roadway. And I'll say it's simple. Even when the roads are free, when the roads are free, a lot of people say, oh, the roads are bad, the potholes. Even when the roads are newly constructed, no potholes, accidents still occur. They occur daily. A recent one that would rightly be a good example would be the Toyota bus stop that happened last week or so. There's nothing wrong with that road. It's a rigid pavement. It's the best pavement you can have in this climb. There's no pothole. The visibility is very good. It's during the daytime. So what exactly is it? It's a user interface. If you have drivers who are under the influence of drugs, Colorado, then it's simple. There's no amount of roads that you will build that would work. So it's the same thing when you talk about Lagos Badagry Expressway. The articulated trucks. Who are the people driving articulated trucks? Are they being regulated? Are we in a position to actually control the things that they're doing? Because you find out the contractor who is working on Lagos Badagry Expressway, even at the Mile 2 junction, at the Mile 2, the underpass by the Mile 2, that used to be a problem before, that we have changed the design into a rigid pavement. That section is now okay. But people cannot still enjoy the benefit. Why? Because the trucks are parking on the road. And why are the trucks parking on the road? Because the ports are blocked. So it's a lot of indiscipline that is right staring us in the face. That's why it appears nothing is working there. But until we begin to change our habits, the way we use our roads, learning to respect the codes and the rules around driving, I think we will still have difficulty no matter the number of roads that we open up. So to that question, August 2021, that flyover should be done, should be finished. When you move beyond the DSS, Okoko, so you talked about Okoko, the encumbrance that what is slowing that Volkswagen is because you have the military barracks. You have the military barracks, so we have some encumbrances around the military barracks. As soon as the military, we are able to resolve that, we can progress, just as we are also coming out of the Alakija bus stop. All in all, but I see that section being completed before the end of this year, once we remove all of those things. So I think that answers all of the questions relating to the road, and then I will pass on the mic to my colleague to talk about the real aspect of this same Lagos Badagry Expressway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are aware of the importance of the rail line to decongesting Lagos, and with the financial structure already put in place, we're targeting the third quarter of 2022 next year. So, I mean, all hands are on deck to ensure that the blue line as well as the red line becomes functional, especially, I mean, for the blue line, we're talking about the section from Mile 2 to Marina, and then for the red line, we're talking about the section from Agbado all the way to Uyingbo. So, third quarter 2022, we'll have those sections operational. Thank you.
Right. Is it that we're not concerned about the health sector? How come Professor Abayomi is on holiday? And then, are we not concerned about the education of our children? The Honorable Commissioner for Education is here. Who wants to fire a question in that direction? Okay. Okay. Please. Then take this gentleman. Sorry.
Good afternoon, all. I'm Clara Mwachukwu, and I write for The Guardian. Okay, so talking about health now, like you said, it appears the COVID expectedly has taken the central stage in health issues. However, there are other diseases or conditions that are killing Nigerians far more than the COVID. You have malaria, you have typhoid, you have hepatitis, you have HIV/AIDS, you have cancer. But all of these appear to have taken a backseat on account of the COVID pandemic. Now, when you talk about, my second question, when you talk about the smart city, I begin to wonder what kind of a smart city are we planning when 2/3 of residents in Lagos live in the slum? And when I look at your budget, just a little above 3% of your 2021 budget is for housing. And even the little that is available is also out of the reach of the common man. So what measures are the government taking to build affordable houses for the people? That's 2. Then 3, still talking about rebuilding Lagos. We all know that the governor has visited the president a couple of times in that regard. Exactly how much support is the state expecting from the federal government in terms of rebuilding Lagos, given its key position in Nigeria? And then finally, from me, we just heard that the Lagos state government is taking over the federal task force to control congestion along the Apapa axis. And I begin to wonder if the federal, with all its might, couldn't bring about change. What then gives Lagos State? What then gives Lagos State the guts or audacity, as it were, to think it could bring about change in that area? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Sunday Michael Ogu, and I write for Daily Trust newspaper. My questions are specifically to the Commissioner for Budget and the Commissioner for Health. Drawing from what the last speaker said, this goes to the Commissioner for Health. We have seen a lot of the revenue projections, I believe, depends on how quick we are able to open up in Lagos to business and other things. We are already in the second phase of what you call second wave of COVID-19. And my concern for Lagos as the 5th biggest economy in Africa is, are we making an independent plan on how to secure vaccine for Lagosians, or are we just waiting for the federal government to get whatever it gets and then using their federal character formula, share to Lagos whatever they think Lagos deserves? And if that happens, then half of the business will remain closed, and these projections will not come to fruition. My second question is to the Commissioner for Budget Planning. You have talked about the need for the balance sheets to breathe and all the ingenuity that had gone into how to finance some of the projects. And so my worry for some years really is it impossible to find other ways of financing the red and the blue lines other than government making direct budgetary provisions for them? Have we not been able to explore PPPs to bring in funds outside government provisions to completely build those lines and operate them? I want to understand the kind of funding arrangements that is available for that, so that when you talk about freeing the balance sheet, perhaps more of the money you have could go into funding other things. And then finally, we know the governor talked a whole lot about the Fort Mainland Bridge last year and all the provisions that needs to be done. To the Commissioner of Transport, I was wondering if this current budget has no, the Special Advisor on Works, I was wondering if this current budget has no provisions at all for moving that project forward. I would like an update in that regard. Thank you.
I'm Saka Kalika. I write for Leadership Newspaper. Mine has to do with security. If we recollect, towards the end of, after the NSA, there was a serious breakdown of law and order. And there are some volatile areas that up till now, we still have that kind of security threat. I'm talking of Agege, Axis, Yanapaja, Mushin, Ushudi, all those areas. And from findings, there are areas where you have armor tank. I think those armor tanks were there to a kind of trying to, whenever there is a riot or something erupts. So that's, but all those tanks were moved during that riot, and some of them are yet to be back to the spot they were before now. So specifically, we noticed that towards the end of the year, there is increase in security threat across the state. What is government doing in the current year to ensure that we avert a kind of breakdown of law and order in the state? Then secondly, on the aspect of, I put it as cutting costs in the area of COVID-19. We've noticed that despite all what the state government is, the kind of advocacy and awareness on COVID-19, people still go about. We have some areas, especially in the hinterland, people still live life as if nothing happened. You see crowded at birthday, wedding, naming ceremony, and people who are crowded, no disregard for social distancing. And I've noticed that the prevention is always the best. You don't have to wait till when things happen, because it's easier to manage when prevention is easier to manage than after the issue has erupted. So I believe what government is doing to ensure that there is monitoring and to ensure that people have regard for this law and order in terms of social distancing and other protocol of COVID-19. Thanks.
I think we're just going to be able to take just 2 more questions. I've been reliably informed that lunch is also served. Thank you.
Emmanuel Amolo is my name, Classic FM. I had to hear this sigh because I was expecting the Commissioner for Transport to really address the whole talk about the smart city. I cannot understand how Lagos in 2021 can still be talking about smart city and we're having Okadas as a means of transportation. And then again, when you lap that with security, you tend to understand how much problem that we have. I listened to the Commissioner for Budget and he spoke about 2 delicate angles, and if you check through your budgets, you'll see both transport and security had a drop. I'm probably going to have to explain that to us. Just yesterday, I witnessed, it was pretty close to me, I witnessed a road robbery with these Okada people, and they robbed off someone, a Lagosian, of his belongings. And it was so easy because I remember there was a time in the state where we had the smart city cameras. I know the cameras are going to be coming back again. So, first off, please, I would like to understand the need explanation to why there was drop in both security and transport, and then also see how soon we can have these smart cities come back on because it could help with tracking some of the criminals that we have in the state.
My name is Bamdele Ogunwusi. I write for Daily Independent Newspapers. So I don't know if we can have the commissioner's presentation than the one given to us because the numbers don't add up. For instance, on page 12 of this, in science and technology, we have 2.502 billion here. But in what the commissioner read, it was 24. This one is 23.502, but in the one the commissioner read, it was 24.579 or so. So probably we'll prefer the presentation of the commissioner. Then the question really is on the overhead cost of the government. Sir, what do you think we need to do to bring this down? So that, I don't know, I'm not in government, so I just feel that if you look at the under recurrent expenditure compared to the salaries and whatever, we still have overhead, taking a larger chunk of recurrent. What do you think can be done to bring it down? Thank you.
Thank you. The answer to your first question is that the presentation will be made available. Thank you. Then the next one will be answered.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. This is directed to the Commissioner of Health, Professor Kiabayi. My name is Otoba Sebasekon from WebTV. First, I must commend Lagos State for joining the federal government to follow the January to December cycle, and I hope that that will continue going forward. Now, looking at the challenge of healthcare and the fact that Lagos State has a huge population, 5th largest economy in Africa, are there plans as you're going to the 2 loans to leverage the market to look at pandemic bonds? One of my senior colleagues suggested that in a conversation I had with him, and I'm looking at Lagos State. If you're thinking in that direction in terms of leveraging the market to specifically look at a pandemic bond, which helps address challenges like COVID and other related disease outbreaks in terms of funding. And then finally, Professor Bayomi, one of the sessions last year, you talked a lot about public-private partnership, very critical for healthcare sector in Lagos. So far, what are the optics in terms of attracting more private equity or venture capital investments, partnering with Lagos State to expand healthcare, transform infrastructure, and invest more in research that can really put Lagos as a very healthy state that leads to an industrialized economy? Thank you.
Thank you. All the questions will be taken now, and then we'll round off with a closing remark by the Honorable Commissioner for Information and Strategy.
Okay, thank you very much for all the questions. I think one nice way to do this is to go by way of like a round robin. I will just ask my colleagues, beginning with the Commissioner for Health, to respond, and he will address all the questions that relate to health, and then we'll go to, just go around like that until it gets back, and I think that will be a nice way of closing the session. So I will just give to the Honorable Commissioner for Health, Professor Abayomi, to respond to mainly the health issues.
Thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner. And thank you for those insightful questions. I will try and address all the health questions at once. There was a question around excessive focus or attention on COVID. So I can answer that question in 2 ways. First of all, it does deserve excess attention. It's a global pandemic, and it is bringing the global economy to its knees. And if we're not careful on how we manage it in Lagos, it will bring the Lagosian economy to its knees as well, and it has already put quite a big dent in our ability to keep livelihoods sustained. So it's a topical issue, and therefore it does get attention. But let me remind you that out of our 27 general hospitals, only one of them is focused on COVID, which leaves 26 to address non-COVID medical issues. We have purposely done that to ensure that COVID does not detract from our ability to deliver correct health for the diversity of illnesses that we have in Lagos State. So the IDH, the Infectious Disease Hospital at Yaba, is the nerve center of the COVID response, where most of our COVID beds are. We have opened a small isolation center as part of Bagada, but Bagada general hospital still remains functional as a general hospital. So what Mr. Governor did in addition to that for several months during the first wave was to remove the tariffs associated with healthcare delivery at our general hospitals and our primary healthcare facilities. Again, apart from the general hospitals, we have over 300 primary healthcare facilities, and none of them are directly involved in COVID management. They're all delivering primary healthcare to Lagosians. So we removed the tariffs for healthcare delivery to really, furthermore, ensure that we don't suffer collateral damage because of our focus of attention on COVID. So in fact, patronage to our general hospitals and our primary healthcare facilities increased because we have separated which facilities manage COVID and which can carry on managing other pathologies in Lagos. In addition, we are still focused on diversifying our expertise in health. As I said, we have 26 general hospitals. Very few of them are mono-specialist. In other words, most of our general hospitals will manage all spectrum of disease, but very few are focused on specialties. So the mother and child centers are maternal and child specialties. The Infectious Disease Research Center is a mono-specialty. We've conceptualized three more mono-specialist facilities in 2020, and we've started significant work on those. The first is the Mental Health Institute, which will be constructed at Ketu Ejiri. It's going to be the largest psychiatric hospital. Lagos State in itself does not have a psychiatric hospital, and we are paying a lot of attention as a priority to mental illness in Lagos State. So from next year, we're going to begin construction of the largest mental health and rehabilitation facility in Ketu Ejiri. We are also designing and about to develop the working drawings for the Infectious Disease Research Center, which will also be located at Yaba, which is going to focus on infectious diseases around, research around infectious diseases. As you've asked the question about vaccines and drug development, as you know, we do not have a biomedical pipeline that can address these kinds of issues, which is why we do not produce vaccines, which is why we do not have vaccines, and which is why we have to wait for the countries that can develop their own vaccines to satisfy themselves first before they give us the excess of their production. So we're trying to step into that space to make sure that Lagos State can engage as an international player in the development of medical innovation and the biomedical economy. A third specialist area that we're driving at is our oncology center. Again, Lagos State does not have a comprehensive cancer facility, and we've started the planning, and in 2021, we're going to commence the development of the Lagos State Cancer or Oncology Comprehensive Center. There are a few more questions addressed to health, and that is the issue of keeping the Lagos State economy open with the support of an independent sourcing plan for vaccines. So Lagos State is a subnational. It, first of all, has to follow the national guidelines for the development of a rollout plan for vaccines. We are following very closely what's happening in Abuja and what the national plans are for a vaccine strategy. It is quite possible and probable that Lagos will need to supplement those plans with its own agenda. And we are making plans to do that. We are just looking at what options we have in terms of vaccines, how we're going to manage the logistics of importation and distribution of vaccines. Delivery of a vaccine strategy is not simply inject people and go away. It is these vaccines are new technology. When you inject or when you're using new technology, you must have an elaborate plan to monitor the people that have been vaccinated, because there is what's called long-term adverse reactions. For any new drug, whether it's a drug or a vaccine, it goes through several phases of safety profiling, and even after it is rolled out, you still have to monitor its safety profile for years. So it's not a simple matter of people queuing up to collect vaccines and going away. We need to set up a sound medical ethical program that will be able to very carefully monitor the people that we select to be candidates for a vaccine rollout in Lagos State. So it's not a simple process. Our first strategy to keep the economy open is the use of non-pharmaceutical interventions. Secondly, contact tracing and containment to slow down the transmission of the virus in the economy. If the virus is going to be with us for the next months or years, then it is something that we just have to get used to living with and adjust our lifestyle to accommodate this new phenomenon that we know as COVID, and run our economy side by side with the cooperation of the populace. The government can only do so much. It is up to the public to follow the clear guidelines that as government, both state and federal, we have carefully rolled out for the understanding of the people of Lagos to partner with us to ensure that we can keep COVID in a place that allows us to keep managing the public health response and the economy. Public-private partnerships. If you are following what's going on in the Lagos State response, it will become very clear to you that Lagos State has indeed a very deep public-private partnership in the COVID response in terms of the laboratories, the isolation centers. We've opened up the space. The role that the government plays, and a very important role, is regulation and public protection. So we haven't just acquired or allowed private labs to test for COVID. They have all gone through very, very stringent quality assurance to make sure that they can perform a COVID test. Many have applied and failed, but the ones that have passed, even though they're testing for COVID, we keep monitoring them every month. And if we notice any results that are going off the skew, we temporarily evaluate what's going on in that lab. We retest all their samples just to make sure that any result that's coming out of our public-private partnership laboratories is accurate. In terms of infrastructure and research, yes, we have very elaborate plans for both public-private partnership and international benchmark standards to make sure that moving forward, we have what's called Mr. Governor's Blueprint Design for Medical Infrastructure Reform. And we are pretty much fed up with building substandard medical infrastructure for Lagosians. As such, we are moving along, myself and my partners in the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure and Physical Planning. We have a very serious and well thought out plan to ensure that from now henceforth, Lagosians are going to see infrastructure that is fit for design, built according to and in compliance with international best practices and benchmarks. So that's, I think, the sum total of the health questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, I will just then thank you very much, Prof. I will just hand over to Engineer Adeyoye to talk about the Fort Milan Bridge quickly.
Thank you, It's Budget, and thank you for the gentleman who asked the question about the Fort Milan Bridge. Like I've always said, the Fort Milan Bridge was constructed well over 30 years ago, and we ought to have finished on this Fort Milan Bridge. And one of the things that has not allowed us as a people and as a nation to actually close out on that has been the lack for the transparency that we needed to show if we were getting funding by a PPP basis. That we started. We started this process exactly in November 2019, where we did ask for expression of interest, International News, Engineering News Journal. And by that way, what we declared to the whole world was that we were going to throw up the cards open, and that's what we have done. That saw the selection process from the 51 people who expressed their offers of interest, seeing us select carefully, and then we came down to 32, and 32 down to 6. So you have the 6. It's a 6-step process. We're in step 3 of the process. So you saw the EOI, you saw the analysis, and then you saw us now getting to the RFQ stage where you were asked, there were qualifiers and questions to ask, and then we're in the process of concluding the RFP process where you're getting proposals from people as to all of the alternatives. The Fort Milan Bridge is a 38-kilometer road and bridge section starting from Ebremadesanya all across to the lagoon. The estimated construction cost we know. You have, so it's not just Lagos State government just doing it. You have consultants with us in the event that there are some skills as a state that our people do not have. So you have transaction advisors. You have on the legal side, you have on the finance side, you have on the technical side, just to be able to support the government. And so I'm hoping that before the end of third quarter, between second and third quarter of this year, we'll be able to get to a financial close where you have your reserve bidder and your preferred bidder. In the event that the preferred bidder has one or two issues, so that we're not caught in the gap in the NAP, then the reserve bidder then comes in. And I want to believe with all of the transparency that we have demonstrated and shown, I do not see the reason why this project should not fly. We've gone a lot ahead with the ESIA, because one of the criteria, anybody who is bringing their investments in, they want to see all of the ESIA procedures in place. And so the last 3-4 months have seen us engage all of the stakeholders along the corridor to ensure that everything we're doing is as transparent as possible and meeting to international best practices. I just want us to have faith in this project. There is no reason why it should not be done. PPP has its own issues. In this climb, we have not been able to, 1 or 2 hiccups, we have not been able to, but I think that we'll be able to get out of this. But aside from that, aside from PPP, other models, we're trying other models. One fantastic model we have tried and is working is the PIIP, the Private Sector Infrastructure Improvement Partnership. It's worked well. We saw Access Bank partner with Lagos State government on the Oniru axis, and we cleaned up that road. 8 of those gridlocks have been addressed. So we've increased the network of road. You've had a road in rigid pavement. There's no reason why that road should not last us with all of the infrastructure in place, both the electricity and everything, so long as we keep taking ownership of them and we use them well. So I think that as a state, like the HC budget said, one thing that this state is known for is its resilience, ability to be able to always rise up. And I'm sure that in all of this, creativity comes in. And Mr. Governor, the leadership of this administration, we've demonstrated that we will always do things creatively to meet the yearnings of the citizenry. So I think that answers the questions on the Fort Milan Bridge. Thank you.
I think the Commissioner for Transport, Dr. Fred, will talk about why we think we can do what the task force put by the federal government could not.
Okay, I think there are 2 questions also. There's one on Okada, so I'll answer that too, but very quickly. Okay, so the difference between what the Presidential Task Force did and what Lagos is about to do is the fact that Lagos State is going in there with a strategy. So what is the number 1 issue there? Trailers go in there, there's nowhere to park. So you had the Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget say that we're investing in truck parks, trailer parks. So we're rebuilding the boilermaid Tinubu Park. We have a private concessionaire that's already working with MPA, and they have concession Lily Pond to them. So we're working with that concessionaire also. And then we're also negotiating another park in Ogiri. So with those 3 parks, where a call-up system has been developed that would link all the trailer parks. So the system would be that if you do not have any business in Lagos, okay, you do not come into Lagos. So when you have business in Lagos on that particular day, you'll be called into Bola Ahmed Tinubu Park, and then depending on the hour in which you have to approach the port, you will then be called into Lily Pond. So there'll be a call-up system. So all independent trailers who do not park in the trailer parks would not have access to being called to do business. And so that would simply drive all those people that are causing chaos in Apapa to actually go into the park so that they can have an opportunity to participate. So we're going in with the system. We have the private sector in place that is working with us as well as with the federal government. So it's a collaborative process between federal government, Lagos State, and the private sector. So we believe it's going to work. It just needs some order. What you're seeing in Apapa is artificial congestion. It is something that is man-made, and it's something that can be solved easily once you bring in order. Let me go to the other question of the gentleman. He talked about the budget for smart city going down. From what I'm looking at here, I'm sure the HC economic planning would validate that that's not the case. It's actually gone up. But let me actually talk about what we're doing to make transportation smarter in Lagos. So sometimes in February, March, we restricted Okada as well as Keke Napep from 6 local government areas and 9 LCDAs. So that's the starting point. One thing is pretty clear. Okada and tricycles are not in the Strategic Transport Master Plan of Lagos State. And the Strategic Transport Master Plan of Lagos State focus on building a multimodal studies, which hinges on our bus system, water transportation, as well as the rail. So what we're doing is the Commissioner for Economic Planning also talked about the last mile. So the last miles are the ones that go into the communities. These are the ones that will do the functions that Okada, that Okada does right now. So they are the ones that will go into the interland, the communities, and then bring people out to the major infrastructure. And so that's why we're, building the last mile. We're starting with 2,000 buses, and then we'll ramp it up to 5,000. So very soon you will see those buses in Lagos. We have divided Lagos into 7 zones. We're starting with about 3 zones right now, and then we'll expand it. And then over time, we'll get rid of Okadas as well as Keke Napep. So that's the plan in the Strategic Transport Master Plan for now. So let me just stop there and then hand over to, who am I handing over to?
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner for Transport. We'll move very quickly because of time. The Honorable Commissioner for Education is here. I think there was a question on our recent programs in education and how that is going to contribute to human capacity, people development in the short to medium term. You might want to help take it.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me here. I think education has taken a significant proportion of the budget, and I think you do deserve to know what we are going to do with it and what we've done with it in the past year. I think the first thing is we just have to ramp up our infrastructure. Like the SA Works has said repeatedly, if you do not use your facilities well, they will not serve you well. In a lot of instances, the infrastructure in our schools, in the public schools, has been found to be quite inadequate, mainly due to excessive population and also due to poor maintenance culture. So one of the first things that we've done, that Mr. Governor did, was to ensure that he gave us sufficient funds to be able to at least upgrade the infrastructure of many of our schools, transform the way they look, and then we put in place a new maintenance culture that will include facilities management and a crew of people on site all the time. We are also going to build new schools. The new schools are of 3 types. First, we'll have the vocational schools. We have about 5 vocational schools in Lagos. Those are inadequate in number. They've been 5 for decades. And what we've agreed is that we're going to build mono schools. They are quite expensive to build because, apart from the building, you must equip and resource them well. So we are going to build what we are also calling mono institutions. Maybe something like, we're working with the construction sector in building a construction school. We're working with the technical partners to build an ICT, an IT hub and school. And we are also planning a fashion design academy as well. So the other type of school that we plan to build, that we are planning, would be what we call a comprehensive school. A comprehensive school will be able to offer either academic subjects or comprehensive subjects, or even both, if you so desire. And we are also going to invest significantly in furniture, because again, in many of our schools, furniture is inadequate. So that has been our major project, but with also, in line with the themes agenda, the first E in the themes agenda is actually education and technology. So integrating both, we've started the Co-Excel program, where we're using digital technology to teach children in primary schools. And in the secondary school, we had a pilot where we had devices given to children in underserved communities. And this year, we intend to now roll out to as many schools as possible, so that a significant amount of work can be done off school. And those are two major projects. We also have teacher training, teacher investment, because, you know, of course, the most critical factor in school is the quality of teaching and learning. So they are training, giving them modern skills, and giving them the resources to be able to teach effectively. Again, curriculum update, because we all realize that our curriculum as we have it now is somewhat obsolete. And so we've woven in 21st century skills and digital technology into our curriculum. We should launch the curriculum, which we have been working on for over a year, with various organizations, various professional bodies, various teachers groups, private schools, and creches, and so on. And we think it's quite an interesting and robust curriculum. We should launch it during the first quarter of the year. I think there's so much that we want to do, and I think by the end of the year, maybe you'll ask us questions. You didn't ask us this year. Maybe, I think transport is more glamorous than, and I accept that. We all drive on the roads, but we don't all send our children to public schools. But it's important that we improve the school system, because it will affect us if we do not do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner for Education. As we round off, I think we have a couple of questions here, which I'll just try and answer. Then I'll pass the baton back to the Honorable Commissioner for Information and Strategy. There was a question on housing, in terms of housing deficit in Lagos. I think for us, housing is, continue to be a big drive in the way we land Lagos State being a 21st century economy. I will continue to focus on that. So what we do is across, I think, 3 levels. We continue to do, partnership, PPP, ensuring that the private sector comes in and invests. And through LASRERA, we're making it easy for the private sector to invest in the housing sector. So, through improved transparency, access to capital. And we are doing something new now, which is the foreclosure law. So we are in the process of bringing in the foreclosure law, because the real issue about housing is not about affordable housing. There is, because what do we really mean by affordable housing? I think what we should be talking about is access. If a house costs 20 million, is it affordable? It's relative. But if I can pay over 20 years, will it be affordable? Will it be easy for somebody to buy it? I think that should be the focus, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. So we're trying to strengthen the mortgage culture, making it easier even for those who provide capital, who provide this finance, by ensuring that there's a foreclosure law, there's accountability. If you default, you may lose your house. So it's easy for all these things to go around. And we believe very strongly that when the foreclosure law comes into being, that it's, access to housing will be more strength. And we continue to also rely on the support that we get from the sovereign, support from the federal government, and all this will help to actually make us to deliver what you call affordable housing. There is a question here about, I think from Daily Trust, balance sheet, to breed. Are there other ways of financing? The financing that we have for our rail, the blue line, the red line, is what they call the DCRR. It's a differentiated cash reserve requirement. It's a CBN intervention, facility that is always committed to significant, projects that have significant economic, outcome, or that affects people in a number of ways, and I think this qualifies to be one. Lagos State, through its novel, bespoke, approach, we're so audacious. We're the first in the country, and I've not heard of any other state that's actually tried to source for that kind of. So it's single digit, 5%, in the first instance, and that for us delivers great value for our debt financing, and also making sure that what we should have been able to deliver in 20 years will be here now, and we've been able to do that. PPP continues to be one of our strong financing model, and for the rail, I think the person who answered the question is, for you to allow private sector to come and invest, you as government need to show, need to demonstrate some kind of interest, and that's why, in the first instance, you need to start something. You need to source for, and at the end of the day, during the concessionaire period, you can recoup back all the, prior investment, and that's how it works. There's a question on security. Security, of course, without security, we'll be running a state of anarchy. There will be, there won't be law and order. So it continues to be, a key focus for this government, and this reflects in the numbers that you see in the budget. And aside the budget, there is a Lagos Security Trust Fund whereby government puts money, and we also enjoy a lot of patronage from the private sector who put in money, corporates, because they know that when Lagos is secured, their business will be secured, and that has always driven a lot of finance to the security side. Somebody asked about pandemic bonds. So there are so many products, in terms of, novel, financing outside of there. We're looking at all kinds of bonds. I think our primary focus is delivering affordable, maybe for lack of better word, cheap, sustainable finance to run our infrastructure in the state. We're looking at green bonds, we're looking at pandemic bonds, and all other kinds that the domestic market has to offer. So that answers that. I think we've been able to touch on, if not all, most of the questions that have been asked. Honorable Commissioner for Information and Technology Strategy, I'll give the microphone to you for your closing remark. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner for Finance. At this point, my job is very simple. Just to thank you guys for coming and for not making our case to be like the case of that rich man in the Bible who provided everything and asked people to come and eat, and nobody showed up. And he asked his servants to go into the streets and bring all manner of people just to fill up the table and ensure that the feast was consumed. I thank you for not making our own case to be like this. I would like to say that, as a final word, that everything that we have discussed here today is for the progress of our state, and I rely on you people, we rely on you to let the world know that Lagos State is working, and that all of the Executive Council members, led by the Governor, Mr. Vaide Sanwo-Olu, that all of us are doing everything possible to ensure that this year, Lagos continues to advance economically and socially. Please, we will be watching out for all the beautiful reports you are going to be making on what has happened there today. And we hope that whenever we call on you again, that you are going to be able to answer us. Thank you very much. And then have a nice day at work. Bye-bye.